Ladies and gentlemen, the Old Head Radio app. A radio station completely curated by Old Head. Nothing but Old Head approved bangers all day, every day. Everything from well-loved classics to lesser-known deep cuts to underappreciated gems to modern-day bangers from all across the spectrum of rock and metal-related genres and subgenres. Also, the home of the live radio show Old Head Bangers Ball. Download the app now for iPhone or Android. Just search Old Head Radio. And we hope you enjoy the bangers. What's up, everyone? So, this video is intended for new vinyl collectors or future vinyl collectors. So, over the past 6 years that I've been doing the Old Head thing, I've found that I often get questions about the different aspects of vinyl collecting because so much of what I do revolves around my vinyl collection that is no longer behind me. It's in its own room now. And I did a really brief video way back in the beginning of all this about my vinyl setup. But ever since then, I've just found myself every once in a while getting another question about something related to collecting vinyl. And it seems like every other day I see a new video pop up on YouTube from somebody about some aspect of vinyl collecting. And I have to admit, a lot of times they don't seem like the same kind of vinyl collectors that I am and a lot of people I know are. And sometimes the things that they have to say are very helpful, and other times they're completely unhelpful, in my opinion. So I decided to make this video. And I'm going to cover all the things because I remember what it was like when I started collecting vinyl again. So I originally had a vinyl collection that I amassed when I was young in the late 80s to early 90s. And then, like a lot of people in the 90s, I upgraded to CDs. And then over the years, I just ended up getting rid of everything I had on vinyl. So I ended up starting from scratch with my vinyl collection in 2016. So of course I turned to the online community for answers to some questions or concerns that I had when I was jumping back into this whole thing. And I quickly learned that there are 3 types of vinyl collectors. Now these can overlap with each other, but it seems like they're mostly just these 3 types of vinyl collectors. Number 1, gear lovers. Those are the people that are just kind of techie type guys. The kind of people that are in bands, and when they talk to you about music, they're more talking about their gear and not actually about music. Same thing goes for these vinyl collectors. Not saying that these vinyl collectors are not interested in the music, but they are heavily invested in different kinds of gear and what the different kinds of gear do and how the different kinds of gear make the music sound, and that's a very important aspect to those kind of collectors. Second, you have collection lovers, I guess for lack of a better term. Those are people that just like collecting stuff, that like going out and buying a bunch of different stuff to amass a collection of something, and in that particular case, it is vinyl. And the third type of vinyl collector, and this is the category that I very much fall in, and that is the music lover category. Now, that's not to say that the other 2 don't love music, but when it comes to me, listening to the music is the number 1 thing. And the reason why I got back into vinyl is because that is the most enjoyable way for me to take on music, because there's the most involved in it, not only with the actual process of getting records and putting on records, but also when it comes to artwork and all of the things that come along with vinyl releases. I just like having as much as I possibly can of the music that I love. And so when I restarted my vinyl collection from scratch in 2016, it wasn't because I thought that vinyl sounded better than any other format, but I do have to admit that I enjoy the way things sound on vinyl much more than CDs or cassettes or streaming or whatever. But I quickly learned that there is no right answer to anything, because some records sound worse than listening to them digitally. It just depends on what you're listening to and what you're listening to it on, and we're going to get into all of that shit. The first thing any new vinyl collector needs to know in this day and age is that it is not cheap. And to answer your question really quick about why it's not cheap anymore, there's no need to go do a whole lot of research. It's literally that vinyl used to be the main way that everybody bought music in the 70s and most of the 80s. And so there was a lot more of it made, a lot more people buying it, therefore the prices were cheaper. And then you come to today and you have inflation and all those other things and the fact that it's now more of a niche kind of thing. And yes, of course, they cost more. If the cost is a problem to you, then you probably don't need to be collecting vinyl. But so much of what I tell you today is going to be all about personal choices. So if you look at a record and you go, there's no way I'm paying $40 for that, then don't. And so that brings us to one of the biggest arguments in the vinyl collecting community. Not really an argument, but it's a preference. Whether to find your vinyl collection by being in the wild, going to record stores, or buying things online via websites or Discogs or whatever. Now, for the type of vinyl collector I mentioned earlier, the collection lover, going out to stores, wherever that might be, is actually the best way to do it. Because if you're just amassing random stuff that you find, yeah, that seems more fun to go out into the wild and do it. But I learned very quickly after a handful of visits to my local record stores when I started collecting again, most of the stuff that I want could not be found. And while I would love to live forever, I'm only here for a limited time. And so I would like to listen to all of my favorite albums on vinyl and have them in my collection. And here's a little something that I don't think a lot of people ever really mention. And so every time you're getting those comments from those people that say things like, well, I like to do my record collecting in the wild. And they say it like they're better than people that buy it online. But let me let you in a little secret. The local record stores, they have an online presence too. There are local record stores on Discogs selling used records that you can buy, and you're supporting local record stores. What, if a record store isn't located in your city, that's not local and you can't support them? No, you should be buying from every record outlet that you feel like you want to buy from. So whether or not you found the record at the local record store that's a couple miles from your house, or if you got it from across the country via Discogs from a record store over in Germany, you're still supporting record stores by buying their stuff. But at the end of the day, it doesn't fucking matter. You get the shit however you want to get it. It is your vinyl collection, and don't let anybody ever tell you otherwise. So yes, I have found quite a few things from going to local record stores, but I would say at least 80 to 85% of my record collection was all bought various ways online. And honestly, for somebody like me, it's way better to find exactly what you're looking for, because a lot of times there's a particular pressing that I would like to have. And if you haven't been on Discogs, that's a really great way to sort of hone in on what exactly you want. Or if there's one that you want, you can find a version that might be affordable to you. So when it comes to stuff that I buy that was made in the 70s or 80s, I don't really buy anything that goes further back than that. I think I have some Beatles and Buddy Holly or whatever, but I think that's about it. But when it comes to any of that stuff, I want to get an OG copy, meaning I want one that was pressed the year the album came out. It does not have to be a first pressing, because when it comes to just listening to the music and owning it, that's a collector thing. That's a thing that's important to somebody who is planning on selling the thing. I'm not planning on selling my stuff ever. I'm planning on having it and loving my collection and listening to it. So I use Discogs to find an affordable version of what I want that came out when the album came out. I brought some examples with me for these. So this is a 1980 US pressing of British Steel by Judas Priest. You can get a repressing of this that was done more recently, and it may cost you $20, $30. I'm not really sure, but I love the way the old school vinyl sounds. And honestly, I feel like you're more likely to get a good sounding and good quality pressing from an old school version than you are a more recent one. Now, I don't remember exactly how much I paid for this one, but there's very few records that I've paid over $50 for. This one was probably $25, $30, and I just did a little digging and I found a pressing that was what I wanted, and it's in pretty damn good shape. And yes, it sounds fantastic. And while we're on the subject, I can't really put my finger on what it is that sounds so much better. I cringe every time I see or hear somebody use the term warm to describe vinyl. That's a temperature. I don't know, but there is. I guess it makes some sort of sense. I don't know. That's just a weird way to put it. But there is a organic sound and feeling that I get when I put on a record and listen to it, especially one pressed in the 70s or the 80s. There are some modern ones that sound that way too. More recently, they've gotten a lot better. There are pressing plants and companies that are doing a lot better. We'll get to represses in a second. Here's another example of an OG pressing, and this is one that I did spend over $50 on because I'm pretty convinced that this version of this album is never going to be repressed on vinyl ever unless it's a bootleg. But the Body Count Cop Killer album, it's the Body Count self-titled album, but for me, it's always been called Cop Killer because when I owned it, that's what it says on the fucking cover. It says Cop Killer, and it has the song Cop Killer on it. And for those of you who don't know, that caused a lot of controversy, and so very quickly that song was removed from the album, and then all subsequent pressings had a different song, and it just says Body Count on his tattoo, and it doesn't say Cop Killer. And I love this album, and I wanted this version of this album. And so here's what I do on Discogs, folks. I will end up finding the pressing that I want, or maybe 2 or 3 pressings of the same thing that I want. I will put them in my want list. And if there's none that are available for a price I'm willing to pay right now, I just wait. And you get those little email reminders saying, here's some new things that have come out on your want list. And you go look, and you got to be quick sometimes. But sometimes you will find somebody who is just wanting to get rid of their record collection. And they're selling something that most other people are selling for $2, $3, even more $100. And you might get it for $50 to $80 or something like that. You just got to be ready and play the long game. Or if you have a whole bunch of money, just go ahead and go online and just get the fucking first one that you find. I wish I could do that. And so eventually there was an affordable copy of Body Count Cop Killer from Europe 1992, and I bought that, and now it's in my collection. Now, another thing with OGs is sometimes there are albums that aren't quite so popular and are lesser known, and I feel like I don't think this is going to get repressed anytime. Because a lot of things from the 90s, they either didn't get pressed on vinyl, or they just did maybe one pressing that was released in Europe or something like that. And sometimes I'm just like, well, I'm okay with holding out for a repressing if they're very expensive. But there are some albums that I just love so much that I'm like, I don't know. If I find one, I'm just going to get it because I don't know for sure it's going to be repressed. And this was one of those albums. I'm pretty sure I also paid over $50 for this 1995 original pressing of Spanaway from Seaweed. Some of you are like, who the fuck is that? Exactly. This is a band that it wasn't that well known at the time and is even lesser well known now. So who knows if this is ever going to be repressed on vinyl? And it hasn't been. There's a green pressing that came out in 96, but that's it. Amazing album if you haven't heard it. But I decided that, look, I want this on vinyl, so I bought the OG copy. I found one, and if you look, like, the corner's a little dinged up, but it was worth it to me for the price. And that's another thing. You got to make sure when you're buying from somebody, you look at their ratings, you look at other reviews from other people that have bought stuff, because sometimes people are really good at grading the record that you're buying and putting in the description exactly what might be wrong with that pressing that you're going to buy. Because I'm not necessarily interested in getting a mint condition copy or a copy in shrink wrap. There is nothing I own that was left in the shrink wrap because I buy records in order to play them and enjoy them, not resell them or talk to everybody about how much it's worth. And so a good portion of my OG collection is what some would consider well loved. None of them are in really shitty condition. There's a couple that I got for pretty cheap that weren't taken care of very well, but now they live with me and they're getting taken care of. This part of their life, they're going to be cared for. And so normally on Discogs, I look for stuff that's VG+, which is not perfect, may have a couple little issues, and occasionally, depending on how hard it is to find the thing I'm looking for, I might go to a VG, which may have things like you're seeing where there may be a bent corner or maybe a price sticker was, tore off part of the art. Sometimes you just kind of weigh how you feel about it. There's no right answer. Are you okay with that? Are you okay with owning the record like that? Then fucking get it. All right, now let's move on to represses. I do have a whole lot of represses in my collection for the reasons like I've kind of already talked about. Either was never pressed on vinyl originally, there's a limited run initially, and they're very expensive, Or maybe it's just something that I like but don't like enough to pay a lot of money for, and so I got a more affordable repressing. First up, here's an example of something that wasn't pressed on vinyl, and then I ended up buying because I wanted it on vinyl. Most people probably don't know this band, Course of Empire. They're a band from the 90s, and they fucking ruled. This was an album that I think came out in 93 and was never pressed on vinyl, and this is a 2023 repressing from DFW Legacy Series. Very good fucking quality. If you know this album and you want this, look it up because it's a really good pressing. But never available on vinyl. I wanted it on vinyl. Now I have it. And then there's pressings like this. So this is Warrant Dog Eat Dog. This is an album that was originally on vinyl. I think they had 1 or 2 pressings when it came out in 1992. And that was it. Not very affordable, but then I found that there was a reissue that was done by Music on Vinyl, which in my opinion is one of the companies that's really knocking it out of the park when it comes to repressing, especially these 90s albums that are hard to find. And my favorite thing about Music on Vinyl is that they do their best to keep everything as the original vinyl art, and even down to the label. So this is on yellow vinyl, but they even keep the Columbia Records label, like whatever the original label of the record looked like, they try to recreate all of that and do a fantastic pressing of the music as well. And for a collector like me that would prefer to have an OG copy, that is the second best thing when a company puts the care into putting something together that's like, hey, you may not be able to own an OG copy, but here is the next best thing. And I appreciate that. And last but not least, in my examples of reissues, this is Pearl Jam Versus, the second Pearl Jam album. And I like this album, but I wasn't willing to pay a whole lot of money for it. So I literally just bought this motherfucker off of Amazon. Pretty sure it was about $25 or so. And this one sounds great. That's the thing. Where you get the record from has nothing to do with how good it fucking sounds. You can buy a good sounding record at Walmart. Walmart doesn't press the records. So if you're concerned about whether or not it's a good pressing or not, just look around online and read a whole bunch of different reviews, because there could be a really great pressing that you can just go down the street to Walmart and buy it, or go to Amazon and get it 2 days to your door. And there's nothing wrong with that, because like I said, it is your record collection. And that also equally goes for the kind of music you want to collect, the albums that you want on vinyl. Just because you're not a rock fan or a jazz fan or whatever, it doesn't mean that you don't need your favorite albums on vinyl. Who the fuck cares? If you like listening to Post Malone on vinyl, go for it. If it's available on vinyl and you want it, get it. Honestly, buying more mainstream stuff on vinyl will probably help the vinyl and music industry, so do it. All right, so here's the part where we talk about the gear, because obviously in order to play the records, you need a record player, although some people will say it's called a turntable. And if somebody corrects you on what you call something, if you call it vinyls or if you call them records, it doesn't matter. It's the same fucking thing. If they can understand what you're saying, there's no problem with the words you're using, and they're just douchebags. So I've been using the same record setup since 2017. My record player is a Fluence RT80 that I got for about $200, has a built-in preamp, and that is running through an SMSL amplifier that literally just has a volume knob on it, and that plays through some Fluence bookshelf speakers that I got for $150. Now, my first record player was the basic level Audio Technica. I don't remember what kind it was, but then once I realized I was serious about the record collecting thing, that's another thing. Start off with something super affordable, and then if you get really, really into it, then you can upgrade and then give your old turntable to somebody else that's wanting to start collecting, and now you're helping it out. You're spreading the love. But when I was upgrading, I landed on the company Fluence because I was looking for something that was still affordable, but also considered good quality by people that I appreciated their opinions. That's the thing. When you're online looking for opinions on whether it's record pressings or gear, you look at as many different reviews as possible, and then look at their reviews of other things, because sometimes you can get a pattern of who actually knows what they're talking about, who actually cares, who might be the same kind of vinyl collector that you are, so maybe you're thinking about the same kind of things. But I ended up getting this Fluence record player. And yeah, once I'm able to do it, I would like to upgrade to a newer model Fluence. But this record player and these speakers have been so good to me that I'm never going to use another company ever. And a lot of the gear lover collectors, they want to get, vintage equipment, or they want fancy receivers that have a whole bunch of different tone knobs. But as you saw, I just have that one little amplifier with only a volume knob, because all I want is the way the record sounds, whatever pressing I have that comes through some pretty good speakers, because those are actually really good speakers. But at the end of the day, that is what I want my particular vinyl experience to be. I want it to sound as it sounds, not me tweaking knobs to make it sound how I think it should sound. And once again, that's not a wrong way to do it. If that's the way you want to listen to your records, that's how you do it. What you don't do is tell other people how they're supposed to listen to their shit. Also, styluses are important, or back in the day, we called them needles. I have upgraded the stylus over the years. Usually, I try to replace my stylus once a year, and I've also replaced the cartridge, which is the thing the stylus fits into, a couple times as well. I can say that upgrading the stylus to a better stylus did improve the sound of the records, so that is one thing that I can suggest. But also, guess what? If you're playing your records on a little Crosley suitcase record player, that's fine too. They're your records. It's your record player. It's your life. Life is too fucking short to be nitpicking at shit, everybody. Are you enjoying it? Great, do it. All right, another thing that I see conversations about online is storing your vinyl records. The thing that I often see that kind of rubs me the wrong way is that people will have their shelves only half full and have some records leaning on other records on either side. And I know that there's a way to do it with not that much weight to where it's not going to cause an issue, but that hurts my heart when people just have records leaning on records. And so I arrange mine. I have a big old cube, like IKEA kind of thing that you can see. And I have the cubes where everything is sitting straight up, but I don't have it overly packed. I can easily slip my hand in and grab a record. And I feel like that's probably the best way to do it. Once again, if you want fancier furniture to store your records, be my guest. But those little cube IKEA, is it Kallax or Kallax, or is that what it's called? I don't know. Those are perfectly fine. And also, I store my records in these little plastic sleeves here because I don't want them to get dusty or messed up when I just want to grab one out and look at it. Oh, I guess it's time to do that sort of thing too, that people, for newer record collectors, here's how you do it. You take it out like this. Look, I have my hand here like this. I have a finger on the other side here that's holding the label part. And then I pull it out like this, and I'm not touching the record. I'm touching the label and I'm touching the sides of the record. And then when you put it on, you're just doing it like this. So you don't get fingerprints on the record, because that can put gross stuff that's on your hands that you don't even know is on your hands, and puts it in the fucking grooves. So just, take care of your records. That being said, if you want to just grab your records with your fingers, do it. Like I said, this whole video is, hey, have fun. It's your shit. But I suggest storing your records in these little things just because it keeps them from getting worn on the shelf and getting dusty and blah, blah, blah. Some people will also tell you that when you get an old school copy that has a paper sleeve like that you should upgrade it to a better quality sleeve that's not as bad on the records. Once again, that's not bad advice, but I like to keep things as they come. And also organizing. Organize your records however you want. Some people do it in categories, like genres. They put I have a hip hop section, I have a jazz section, I have a blues section. I don't do that. I'm very OCD about what category something would go in, that it would take me forever to actually categorize records, and I'd be constantly moving shit around because I would decide, this is actually a little more funk than it is rock. And so because of that, I literally have my records from A to Z. We'll actually start with numbers all the way to Z, and then various artists like soundtracks. And then within those, for each artist, I have the albums in chronological order. And then I have a small separate section for 10 inches, and then I have a little box that's filled with 7 inches. Same thing, alphabetical, chronological. I think I've covered pretty much everything. Trying to remember the things that I've been asked over the years and trying to fit it all in this video. The last thing that I can tell you, and I think I've mentioned it earlier, is if you're looking for opinions on gear or on a record pressing or anything, do not just rely on one source. If this is one of the first videos you've watched about vinyl collecting, please watch at least a dozen more, maybe even more than that if you have time, and just kind of come to your own conclusion about what is important to you as a vinyl collector. Because when it comes to your shit, the only right way to do it is your way. And you may not know what that way is just yet, but if you really love this whole vinyl adventure, then give yourself 2-3 years at least. And then I would say at that point, you're going to know exactly what kind of collector you are. And then you can make your own video like this. Okay, so that's it. I hope this video has been informative for some of you. And if you already knew a lot of this stuff and you watched it anyway, I hope this video was enjoyable. If this is your first time seeing my stupid face, I do a lot of other videos, and I do a podcast called Cranked and Ranked. Just go search around, go to oldheadnetwork.com, and you'll see all the shit that I do. So hopefully you enjoy some of it. All right, thanks for watching. I will see you all again very soon.